Hey everybody, this is A7X Fan Ben, and welcome back to the Collection Review Series. This is episode number 23, and I'll be going over all 10 forts in the game. They were released in Crimson Coast, and they were originally going to be in Spanish Main, as you can hear from my podcast with Mike Selinker, and you can see that on the Windjammer as a fort-based ability before forts even got released. So we've got 5 from Crimson Coast, and then with the American one, we've got 5 from Revolution, so I'm just going to start going through them. As with the other stuff, they're organized by faction, so English, then French, Spanish, Pirate, and American, with the regular faction order you've seen in the previous CRS videos. So Ramsgate is really awesome. This one has 4 3L cannons, and this one has an ability that lets you have an LL range cannon for like zone control. So this is pretty much my favorite fort, and I think it's one of the coolest forts in the game, and maybe even slightly underrated compared to Paradis and the Devil's Maw, which are both great, and even Fort Laza Dorada. This one is somewhat cheap for what firepower you get for 4 gold. Got some solid cannons. Of course, the English have a ton of great firepower to back up this fort. So Ramsgate's a really fun one because the 3LL cannon, or the cannon with LL range, allows you to shoot opponents basically at extended range, only with 1 cannon, but it's still a pretty awesome ability, and it helps you control the board if you want to go with a zone control strategy using the sniping ability, extended range, flotillas, stuff like that. So Ramsgate, I would give probably a 9 out of 10, I would say. Fort Brompton, this one's pretty basic. This one also has 4 3L cannons. Hopefully I'm getting all the cannons right. I should probably grab the forts, but I'm not going to for this video, so I should be able to get them all right. But anyway, so this one has solid cannons. It's nice and cheap, only 3 gold. That was the minimum cost for forts. None of them were less than 3, and none of them were more than 5, which is kind of a problem, as we'll see later. But this one has a solid ability, so similar to the World Hater ability. Most games you wouldn't really want to keep a ship docked at it, but it could be convenient. If you're defending a fort, you might have a ship docked there anyway, so that would be a solid strategy. So this is a pretty nice defensive fort, and cheaper than Ramsgate, so it gives the English another option there. St. Pierre is not a good one. This is one of the worst forts. I think it has 5 4L cannons, and if ship docks at this fort unloads at least 4 gold, it may be given a second action that turn. I don't think I've ever seen that happen in the game. Granted, I haven't used St. Pierre a ton, especially because the other French fort is way better, but this is not an ability that's going to happen very often, if ever. And although it's cheap, there's much better forts for the same cost. So, and for 1 more gold, you can pay to get Paradis de la Mer, which is the best fort in the game, pretty much by far. So this one, pretty sure the cannons are 2 2Ls, 2 3Ls, and a 4L, I believe. And then the first time this fort is shot at each turn, roll a d6. The result is the number of times this fort must be hit that turn before any of its cannons can be eliminated. So this is just devastating because as long as you roll, I mean, even just a 1 is cool, because that basically ignores the first hit ability, which is nice in general. But if you roll, 2, 3, 4 or higher, the fort's going to be really difficult to hit unless your opponent is bringing more than 1 ship to bear on the fort. And if you roll a 5 or 6, there is very little your opponent can do. A lot of times I've seen in games, like competitive games, where if you roll a 6 on this ability, you have to hit it 6 times before you start doing damage, so there's no point in even rolling. You might only have 5 cannons available. So this one is just ridiculously overpowered, basically. Should be bare minimum 6 gold for standard games, but I wouldn't mind seeing it like 8 or 10 because that's how good it is. It's got good cannons as well, all L range, and for 4 gold, like I said, it's the best fort in the game. There's really no debate, basically. It's pretty much objectively the best. Getting into the Spanish, they were the only faction to get 3 forts. It's a little unbalanced between the big 5. The Americans only got 1, the Spanish got 3, then the other 3 factions got 2. El Castillo del Infanta, this one is kind of meh. I think she has 5 4L cannons, and she's got the cannoneer ability built in, so not too great. One of the most boring forts, but not bad for 3 gold, so not a bad deal, really. This one is one of the worst, so, and you can kind of tell Crimson Coast, their forts were not quite as good. They kind of had I guess you could call it a little bit of a fort power creep going into Revolution, because most of the best forts, pretty much all the best ones, and the most expensive ones are from RV. But El Puerto Blanco has only 3 cannons. I think they're all 3Ls, and ship docked at this fort may use its action for the turn to look at 1 face-down treasure on each island. So that's actually not that useful because you're only looking at one from each island. You have to give up an action, which is disgusting in most games. That's just not, it's not a tenable option. That's not, you're not going to do that realistically in most games. Maybe if you have like El Raton, a little 2-point ship, doesn't have really anything to do, it's possible. But, and also by the time you build a fort, you'll already know like a lot of the gold, where it is and what's on different islands, stuff like that. Unless you're building this fort like early in the game, which you could try to use that as a little strategy to spy. But overall, not an impressive fort. And I think it's the only one with only 3 cannons, so it's also really weak. So it's easy to take out. So I think 3 gold is a fair price for most of the forts, even the lesser ones. But if there was going to be a fort under 3 gold, that would probably be the one to go for 2. That is pretty cheap though for a fort. Because they do lock up gold until your opponent destroys them or whatever. So, or you take gold out of it and then you could get robbed after. But you can't take more than, you can't take what gold was used to build the forts, of course. So, alright, so the last Spanish one, of course, is from RB, and it's the best one, the Spanish got. So Fortaleza Dorada, this one, pretty sure has, man, I should remember it. It's got 6 cannons, they're all rank 3. I think there's 2... No, I think there's 4 3Ss, short range, and then 2 3Ls, I'm pretty sure. It could be the reverse, but I think there's more short range guns. I'm pretty sure 4 of those. L range cannons cannot hit this fort, so L immunity on a fort, which is great because it forces your opponent to come within S, essentially, to try to hit it with the shorter range cannons. So that allows Fortaleza Dorada to actually use those shorter range cannons. In general, forts with short range cannons, there aren't many of them, but usually they don't do well at all because it's really easy to park outside of the fort's S range guns and just chip away from L range or whatever. So this ability is really nice defensive ability because it forces ships to pretty much take the fort head on. And this one with 6 cannons is the most, she has the most flags in the game. So with 6 cannons, she's the most durable. Throw in the defensive ability and this is a really good fort. You can make a pretty good case that it's the second best fort after Paradis. So the Spanish got a good one. Their other 2, not so great, but between the 3, they're pretty well stocked here. Beginning of the Pirates, Dead Man's Point I guess should be first, but anyway, I guess I'll just do that one first because it came out first. So Dead Man's Point is a nice one. Actually, this is a really good one. 3 gold. This one has 4 3L cannons, similar to the other, some of the other ones from, or at least similar to Fort Brompton. And when this fort hits an enemy ship, you may also eliminate 1 cargo from that ship. So that's cargo wrecking. That's not once per turn. It's every single hit. So this one is really awesome. Really great, cheap offensive fort. You can make I'm thinking a pretty good case that this is the best 3 gold fort. A little bit better than Fort Brompton, and definitely better than those other 3. So this one is one of the best forts, and probably the best cheap one. So Dead Man's Point is great. The Devil's Maw is really unique though. This one is expensive at 5 gold compared to the others, but it's generally worth it. This one has 2 2S cannons and 3 3Ls. And place your eliminated crew on this fort, they gain the ghost ship keyword. So that's a really interesting one. So if your crew are eliminated, they're not really dead in this case. They come back as ghosts. So, and the ghost ship keyword isn't great. And I haven't seen this one used all that effectively, especially in smaller games. But it is a nice option for the pirates, a really thematic option. And it makes the fort one of the most unique forts in the game. So just keep in mind you can't combine it with sacrifice crew, because for that ability to work, to get the extra action from sacrificing a crew, the crew have to stay eliminated. So you can't combine them, just to make sure everybody knows that. So the pirates between these 2, they got a nice cheap offensive one, and then kind of like almost like a long-term, not so much defensive, but kind of like a long-term bigger game type fort with the Devil's Maw. So the pirates got a nice mix there. They did pretty well with forts, as they did with most other things, of course. And then finally we get to the Americans. They weren't in Crimson Coast, so it kind of does make sense they only got 1 fort from RB. And it's not a great one. Thompson's Island, pretty sure this one has 5 4L cannons. And you see the same ability as Fort Brompton, so if you want to park a ship there. One nice thing about this one, you could park like a native canoe there and get the bonus from that. So Thompson's Island, pretty basic, not too interesting, but it does give the Americans the fort option, and it's not too expensive, so still get a thumbs up for this one. Mostly because it's their only fort, so this is important for the American fleet in general. So it's a solid fort. So overall, those are the 10 forts released. I wish there were more. They never released them after Revolution, but I've got a ton in my custom sets, and some other custom creators have made some as well. So let me know what you think of this video, any comments or critiques, stuff like that. And the question of the day would be, which fort do you think is the best, and which is your favorite fort, and why? So thanks for watching, and I'll be back with more videos.